You buggers!
And as you just heard Dane, the Lord of the Iron Hills, say, we are going to be starting with the old Twirly Whirly, the Iron Hills Ballista. So I want to go ahead and make a quick note. If you are going straight from the Army of the Hobbits book, the ballista has been pointed up, so you're going to have to check the erratas in order to get the accurate pointing, or if you use something that's really good and very accurate, only an army builder is very good at having the appropriate amount of points per model. And as I've said in other videos, highly recommend that over Battle Scrap. It has the Siege Weapon and Iron Hills keywords. It is Strength 8, Defense 10, and has 4 wounds. It is a large siege weapon and is crewed by 4 Iron Hills dwarfs with heavy armor and swords. They are appropriately given the profile for that. They are 5-inch moving dwarves, obviously. Strength of 4, fight value of 4, defense of 6, 1 attack, 1 wound, courage 4. There are 4 of them, and one of them is automatically going to be the Siege Veteran, and they're going to have the Dwarf Iron Hills Infantry and Warrior keywords outside of the Veteran, of course. The upgrades for this include an Iron Hills Dwarf Engineer Captain, Superior Construction, or you can purchase additional crew. It has 3 special rules, the first being reliable. When firing an Iron Hills Ballista at a target, the shot will only scatter 3 rather than 6. Furthermore, the Iron Hills crew may re-roll ones to hit. That's very good. Having a 3-inch scatter really helps this thing because it's got a very nice spillover effect, but it also helps make sure that with its other effects that it has, that being the old Twirly Whirlies, that your targets get hit, your shots land on target or as close to it as possible, because that's what you're really going for. All right. And then the re-roll ones to hit, awesome, because it really sucks when you roll that thing. It is a 4-up shoot value, so you have to go by the shoot value of the crew. You've got a 50-50 there, and being able to re-roll the 1 on the first roll can really help. So this next special rule, which I've alluded to a couple times, is the old Twirly Whirlies, and that is the Iron Hills Ballista always counts as declaring a heroic shoot. There is no need to spend might. Additionally, the ballista follows the rules for volley fire, so that's very good. That means it's going to see anything on the field as long as another model in the army has a line of sight on it. When the ballista hits a target, place a marker under the center of the target model. Draw a line from the center of the ballista to the center of the marker. Shooting attacks that are strength 6 or less cannot target any model within 3 inches of that line for the remainder of the turn. Additionally, shooting attacks that are strength 6 or less cannot be made if they cross the line at any point. If a shooting attack that is strength 7 or more targets a model that is either within 3 inches of the line or the shot crosses the line, roll a d6. On the roll of a 5 plus, the shooting attack is prevented. At the end of the turn, remove any marker placed due to this special rule. So that's what we all know from the scene from the extended version of the Battle of 5 Armies, where the elves fire their bows and good old Twirly Whirlies come out and do their thing. Or it might have been in the theatrical release. I can't remember. It's been a while since I've watched it. All I usually watch is the extended edition, so to me, they're always there. But I have to assume they must be in the theatrical release, since the Iron Hills Ballista came out with the release of that movie, not the extended. But moving on, it is a very good special rule, the old Twirly Whirlies, being able to basically deny your opponent to shoot, in a 6-inch line, depending on where your target is. So you can kind of cover a weakness of the dwarfs, which is to be slow moving, by having this shot come down and basically create a barrier around your own dwarfs, your own models. So if you pin the shot over the top of them, then and they're sitting there within that length of line on either side, 3 inches. It's a 6-inch range total. You're talking about not being able to get a lot of shots off. And yes, dwarfs are hardy. Defense 8 with the shield wall, like we talked about. They still do need to have the ability to get to your opponent without getting picked off by any sort of crazy shots or your opponent's siege weapons, because unfortunately siege weapons are a huge thing that are seen nowadays. So it's great to have something that can counter that as well. So moving on, we get to its last special rule, and that is tremendous impact. And if an Iron Hills Ballista scores a hit against a battlefield target, all man-sized or smaller models within 2 inches are knocked to the ground. Cavalry models within 2 must take a thrown rider test. Additionally, any models within 2 inches also suffers a strength 4 hit. So that's your AoE damage right there, your area of effect. Very good. Not the best. There are ones that hit harder. There are siege weapons that hit harder, but for what the Iron Hills Ballista brings, the fact that you're always going to get a heroic shot, and that's kind of something I kind of glazed over there on the last rule. That heroic shoot is really good. So it's always going to go first, so you're always going to be able to provide some sort of coverage for your army with them. So nothing to laugh at there. And then the ability to have a nice 2-inch strength 4 spillover damage that will knock things prone. So let's go ahead and move on, and we're going to go ahead and talk about the Chariot. And the Chariot, there's a lot to cover here, okay? 4 pages worth of rules, so bear with me. This is going to be a lot of reading and then kind of talking about it. And there's going to be things I probably forget and bounce back and forth. So this is going to be the big meat and potatoes right here. So the Iron Hills Chariot. Dwarf Iron Hills Warrior keywords. The crew are Fight 4, Strength 4, Defense 6, 4 up shoot value, 1 attack, 1 wound, Courage 4. The Chariot itself is also Fight 4, Strength 4, Defense 8, 2 base attack, 5 wounds, Courage 3. Doesn't really matter because the Chariot, you know, it's a Chariot. It's not going to flee or anything. The war gear on the Dwarf crew are Heavy Armor and a Sword. Your options are a Captain, Iron Hills Captain, which replaces the driver. And then the Champion's Airborne, which becomes a huge thing in itself. And they technically don't even fall in this army. They fall under the Airborne Reclaimed army list. I might talk about them. We'll see what we're looking at time-wise after I get through this. So it has Fearless and Monstrous Charge, which is great. So Terra models don't matter. And then Monstrous Charge, if you charge, you're going to get knocked down along with an extra attack. So that's really awesome as well. So let's go ahead and start with the first bit we have. We have Dwarven Crew. Any Iron Hills Dwarf Warrior may replace a slain crew member by ending their move phase in base contact with the Chariot. Any Iron Hills Dwarf Warrior who joins the Chariot immediately drops their spear, shield, mattock, crossbow, or banner. Should the driver be killed, another Iron Hills Dwarf on the Chariot immediately takes their place. Any Chariot that has all of its crew slain is immediately removed as a casualty. So not bad there. You can see you're going to basically have 3 dwarfs potentially adding their ability to fight, and they're the ones who are going to get targeted. So if your opponent is not going to target the Chariot, they're going to target the crew. And honestly, that's probably the best way to try and kill this thing, is because of the fact that the crew is only defense 6. They don't have shields, and they're not going to get shield wall because of that. So losing out on shields and shield wall makes them that formidable defense 8 down to a defense 6. Still, nothing to laugh at, because defense 6 is hard to break. You're talking about most common troops being strength 3. They're going to need 60 to wound, but a couple heroes in there being strength 4 instantly makes it a lot easier to kill these dwarfs. That being said, if they do start getting picked off, you can replenish them with your Iron Hills Dwarf Warriors. So a good way to keep that Chariot alive, especially because the Chariot is a huge point sink. I don't know if it will ever make its points up. I have done a good job with it. I've taken out a whole warband before of warriors, but even then, that's with a captain upgrade, which we'll talk about in a few minutes as to why I think that's a brilliant thing to always take. You still really have a hard time making up your points with this thing, but it's more of a threat. It's more of a great way to get some easy kills, and it's just a huge control piece. Moving on, we have the rapid fire bolt thrower. Any Iron Hills dwarf that is not the driver may man the rapid fire bolt thrower. This is a crossbow that fires d6 shots per turn. The bolt thrower only has a limited field of fire of 45 degrees to its left or right. The Chariot may still fire even if it has moved its full distance that turn. Additionally, the Chariot does not suffer the -1 penalty for moving and shooting. It's like a stable platform for a Khandish king, where the Khandish charioteers can still shoot even if they've moved full out. I can't remember if they take a penalty or not, but I do know that they can still shoot even if they move fully. So this is even better if they do take the penalty, because they get to move. The chariot gets to move its entire movement, which is 8 inches, by the way. I forgot to mention that. It is an 8-inch movement, and then still shoot without a penalty. Moving on. The chariot may still shoot even if engaged in combat and does not need an in-the-way test for models engaged with it. Each shot may target a different enemy. If it does this, then the dwarf operating the rapid-fire bolt thrower may not add its attacks or fight value to the duel roll and may not make strikes in the following fight phase. So, really cool there. Note, you can shoot into your own combat. So if you move or you get charged and you've got, say, 6 guys, you can roll your d6. Say you get 4 hits or 4 shots, and 2 of your 4 shots hit, then you can hit and potentially kill 2 of the guys that have charged you, which is really great. It allows you to help pick guys off and keep you from getting overwhelmed, because that is one thing where if an Iron Hills Chariot gets overwhelmed with too many guys, it can go down in a turn or two. Crazy as it is, but like I said before, the weakness of the chariot is going after the crew itself. Once you take the crew out, the whole thing is gone. And if it gets if you get enough dice rolling, it can happen pretty fast. So that is a good way to help maybe mitigate that, is to give up the extra dice in combat and go ahead and shoot and potentially kill some guys that are in combat with you. And what I mean by give up the extra attack in combat, we'll talk about in a minute. But if your opponent has charged you and has spear supports, you can go ahead and pick these guys off that are in contact with you. And then not only are you taking the guy that's in base contact out, you take the spear support or pike support out if they have pikes as well. So you can remove multiple dice just by killing a single guy. So a nice little thing to think about. So let's go ahead and talk about the chariot in combat real quick, since I keep alluding to that. The chariot counts as one model in a fight. Any surviving crew members that are not driving the chariot add their attack to the duel roll. Additionally, the chariot will also use the highest fight value of any dwarf that is on the chariot. That includes the driver. So that is why I always think it's brilliant to take the captain over just the regular Iron Hills Chariot. Yes, it's a bit of a points increase, but the captain is also a higher defense at 7 than the defense 6 of the troops. Why is he defense 7? Well, he loses his shield. So unfortunately, he does not get to be defense 8. But still good to have. And he's fight value 5. Not only that, he brings 2 points of might. So you can do marches or you can do movements. And he has master battle on a 5+. So you always have the potential to potentially steal a free movement or something with him. This next part is really key, and that is no model that is riding on an Iron Hills Chariot can declare a heroic combat. So this is a mistake that I've had, and I talked about it in an event review. There we go, an event review that I did. Actually, I think it was earlier this year when I went down to an event down in South Carolina, where my opponent called a heroic combat by master battling with his chariot captain. Unfortunately, that is not allowed. I knew it, I just couldn't prove it, and I didn't have my Armies of the Hobbit book with me due to the fact that I was playing a Lord of the Rings army. So I only had my Armies of the Lord of the Rings. And so when I challenged, there was no way for me to prove it, and unfortunately the TO didn't do a good enough job looking into it to find that I was correct. Kind of bit me in the ass. It's neither here or there, but it is crucial to know the Iron Hills Chariot can never declare a heroic combat. It is not allowed, because the driver, usually being the one that has the might, and the captain is driving. He's not actually in combat. Those in combat are the crew. Alright? So moving on, if beaten, any model wishing to strike the crew must roll to see if they hit the crew or the chariot. To do this, roll a d6 for each strike. On a 4-up, the strike hits the crew, and on a 1 through 3, it hits the chariot. Alright? Now, who does it hit? It hits whoever you choose. It can be the nearest guy, or it can be the driver. It's up to you. If the chariot loses the fight, it does not back away. It also never counts as being trapped. If the chariot is slain and the crew inside are lost, remove the model as a full casualty. So that's also big, is even though you can get surrounded, they can never double their dice against you, which is good for, again, potentially keeping that thing alive. Now, going back, it does have like that bulwark defense, like a Conda's Chariot, for again, for an example, where you have to roll to see, and in the way, basically, to see what you hit. Do you hit the Chariot, or do you hit the crew? So nice little bit there. And then there you go. That's what I was talking about. Again, going back to the very first part, additional crew. The crew may lend their attacks. So the Iron Hills Chariot has a base of 2. You have three crew outside of the captain that can lend their attacks. So if you have one of those 3 man the bolt thrower, the best you can give is 2. And you have monstrous charge. So if you get the charge off, then you end up getting 3 attacks plus knockdown. So you can have a maximum of 6 attacks in a fight. That's pretty cool. Alright, moving on. Let's go ahead and talk about the Chariot charge. And this is going to be kind of talking about how it moves. So the Iron Hills Chariot is an unusual model and moves in the following way. At the start of the move phase, the controlling player may pivot the Chariot up to 45 degrees. When pivoting, the Chariot may touch models of terrain. In the case of models, move them out of the way by the shortest possible route. In the case of the terrain, move the Chariot away just enough to complete its pivot. Alright, so that's something that I've seen done where you kind of have to be careful how you move. It's kind of similar to how War Beasts move, and I've seen a lot of people screw up War Beasts, like, oh yeah, he would just get out of the way. Like, they get stuck in an alley and they pretend like they could possibly turn around in the alley. Nope. If you're stuck in the alley, there's nothing you can do about it. You're just stuck. So moving on, after you've done your pivoting, or if you don't want to do your pivoting, the Chariot that may then move 4 inches in a straight line. If it has moved a full 4, it may pivot again another 45 degrees, and then the Chariot may move up to a further 4 in a straight line. So basically, pivot, move a full 4, pivot again, move a full 4. When the Chariot moves, it ignores enemy control zones. Any models that the Chariot comes into contact with whilst moving, not pivoting, will suffer 3 strength 6 hits. If the model is slain, then the Chariot may continue with its movement. Cavalry models suffer these 3 hits on both the rider and the mount. If the rider survives, if the mount is slain, the rider is thrown, and after testing on the thrown rider, chart is placed in base contact with the Chariot. Might may not be used to affect the results of these hits. A Chariot that is affected by heroic march may still inflict these hits as normal. If the model the Chariot charged survives, the Chariot will still gain the benefits of its monstrous charge special rule. The Chariot may instead choose to forego its movement in order to pivot to face any direction. If a Chariot is moved by an enemy model, it may not pivot in this way. So basically, it's saying if it's moved by an enemy model, we'll talk about that in a minute when we get to spells, but if you get compelled or something, you can't pivot it. It just gets to move forward. You can go ahead and spend your entire movement just to turn around, which if you do that, then that means you really messed up your movement with it or your deployment or something. So this is a piece where you kind of need some practice to learn how to maneuver it so you don't end up getting bogged down or stuck in a corner or stuck up against something that you really didn't want to be stuck against, all right? And then those impact hits are really great. And then when it's talking about the heroic march, that's really where this comes into play for this thing being devastating, because it is considered, it's not considered cavalry, which is too bad, but you do add an extra 3 inches on a march, so you get to move, you can move it 11 inches, which is great. And I know someone out there is going, whoa, why is it not considered cavalry if it doesn't have the monster, if it has monstrous charge? Well, it doesn't have the cav keyword. You have to have the cav keyword in order to get that benefit of 5 extra inches, okay? So if you do a march, you're only going to gain 3. It's not a big deal. Still moving 11 inches can be really devastating. Like I said earlier, have heroic march through an entire war band of 12 models and killed every single one. Those strength 6 hits always seem to either be really good or really poor. So there is that to note on. Alright, so let's go ahead and talk about this thing as a large war machine. On the turn in which the Iron Hills chariot charges, it gains the extra attack and knock to the ground bonuses as if it was a cavalry model. And there you go. That's what I was talking about. It doesn't have the cavalry keyword, but it gains it as if it were. The Iron Hills chariot still gets these bonuses even if it charges a cav model. When the chariot is hit by a shooting attack, the shooter must take an in-the-way test to determine if the chariot or the crew are hit. On a 1 through 4, the chariot has been hit, and a 5 through 6, it's the dwarf closest to the shooter. The chariot may not make jump, climb, leap, or swim checks, and may not lie down or defend barriers. It may not enter difficult terrain other than shallow water features, including swamps, rivers, etc., in which case it completely is unimpeded by shallow water. The chariot cannot be barged, hurled, or knocked prone for any reason. So there's some good stuff right there. Getting shot at, basically you're behind a sturdy defense, because normal in the ways is a 3-up, a 4-up, and a 5-up. So it's going to have that that purpose-made fortification of the 5 or 6 to actually hit them, which is really good. Chariot and magic. Models with magical powers can use them on the chariot, selecting either the chariot itself or one of the crew members as the target. Magical powers that affect multiple targets will automatically affect both the chariot and its crew if in range of the model. Only by affecting the driver will a magical power such as transfix or compel impede the chariot's movement, thereby causing it to remain stationary or take a move as described by the magical power. So that's where we were talking about before with the pivoting. If you compel the chariot by compelling the driver, you can't pivot it, but you can make it move straight forward. So that's another reason why you take the Iron Hills Captain, because you'll have at least a single point of will to potentially stop one of those stupid spells from getting you for at least a turn. All right. Going back to magic. Finally, magical powers such as Sorcerer's Blast, Nature's Wrath, and Call of Winds will not move the chariot or knock it prone, because again, it doesn't get knocked prone for any reason, although they will still inflict any damage as detailed in the magical powers description. Okay. So lastly, we're going to talk about the Iron Hills Chariot. We've been talking about the Iron Hills Chariot. The Iron Hills Captain. There we go. If this upgrade is taken for the chariot, then an Iron Hills Captain will replace the driver. The Iron Hills Captain will have all of the usual war gear and special rules that an Iron Hills Captain would normally possess whilst riding the chariot. So I actually wonder if he does get the shield then because of that, because it says the usual war gear and special rules, and the shield is in his war gear. So I wonder if he is defense 8 then. I would rule based off of that he does have the shield and he is defense 8. So ignore what I said earlier. I was looking at the points cost, and he's actually cheaper for whatever reason as an upgrade than his base cost as a unit. So I thought maybe the fact that maybe he doesn't have the shield is the reason why he was cheaper. But that can't be, because it says right there that he has all of that. So anyway, I guess he must have the shield, which makes him defense 8, which is even better. I already talked about, he'd have the normal war gear and special rules that the Iron Hills Captain would normally possess whilst riding the chariot. The chariot counts as a hero for the Iron Hills army list and may be the army leader. If the Iron Hills Captain is taken, replace the warrior key with the hero whilst the captain remains alive. So he would be a hero of fortitude, which gives him the ability to lead troops. So I'm not sure about you guys, but I still think Dane would be the better way to go for a leader. Okay, so those are the two big siege weapons / big pieces for the Iron Hills army. I'm not going to go and talk about the champions, the arrow bore upgrade. We will talk about that in the Airborne Reclaimed Army when I get to that review, just because we're already at almost 25 minutes, and that's kind of getting a bit long based off of how I've been trying to do these. So I hope you guys enjoyed Iron Hills. I'm going to go ahead and spend a couple minutes talking about their allies list and their army bonus, and then we will wrap it up from there. So, looking at the allies list, we're just going to talk about the green historic allies, just because that's going to make the most sense. And they've got 3 really good ones. So the first being Army of Thor, and then Thranduil's Halls, and then Survivors of Lake Town. And honestly, all 3 of those are really good allies. You can go ahead and do Army of Thor if you want to go and get more variety in your heroes. You can get young Thorin, Thrain, Thor, young Balin, young Dwalin. So you get a a much better access to heroes, and you can kind of diversify your troops a little bit. Where the Iron Hills warrior is very good, unfortunately he's expensive, and you could go and get some cheaper troops with warriors of Erebor. And also you can get some Grimhammers as well, because Grimhammers can help you out since they have throwing axes, so you can get a little bit of close range throwing action. Close range ranged attacks. There we go. That's kind of I don't know, a weird statement. Close ranged. Yeah, we'll just giggle at that. Anyway, moving on. Halls of Thranduil, another good one to ally with. You can go ahead and throw Thranduil in there, which is a very common thing you see. You see a lot of Thranduil's Halls, Iron Hills combos with Dane and Thranduil, because Thranduil is extremely versatile in his build. Probably going to talk about Thranduil's Halls in the near future. And anyway, he's very versatile in this build, so you can take him very cheap, or you can take him fully kitted and get 2 butt-kicking heroes. You can take Legolas, you can take Tauriel, so you can get some access to some really good elves, and then you can get access to strength 3 bows on 3-up shoot value, so you get a little bit better shooting than what you would with crossbow-wielding dwarfs. And the biggest thing you're going to get is fight value 5, so you can go and put yourself a defense 7 front line. That's strength 4 with fight value 5 spear supports. And, fight with the sword and feint for free, quote unquote, against most armies out there that are fight 4 or lower. So not a bad combination there. And then lastly, the Survivors of Lake Town is another good option, because you can take Bard, who he needs his daughters to really be good, but he's a pretty cheap hero, quote unquote, for what he can do, which is a lot. And then he's also a hero legend. That's the other thing that you can get with all 3 of these, is you have access to multiple heroes of legend. So you don't have to just have Dane be your leader. But you also have access to a lot of cheap troops. Survivors of Lake Town troops, I think they're Lake Town Militia, are extremely cheap. So you can go ahead and field a bunch of them and go ahead and give yourself some spear supports where, you're not going to have... You're losing that maybe fight 5 that you would have if you went with Thranduil's Halls, but they're cheap units, so you can take twice the amount, which would be really good to help increase numbers, which is something that Iron Hills usually lacks. I haven't seen it done that way specifically. Usually it's more of the Thranduil's Halls and Iron Hills, but it's not a bad way to go, and I have kind of been tempted to try it out myself. So lastly, let's go ahead and talk about the army bonus real quick, and that is Ironfoot has come. In scenarios where you roll for additional forces to arrive, such as those that use the reinforcements rule, you may modify your own reinforcements roll for warbands from this army list by +1 or -1. In scenarios where you roll to see which part of the board your warbands deploy in, you may modify the dice roll by +1. So really good for Maelstrom. And then additionally, Dane, Ironfoot, Lord of the Iron Hills receives Master of Battle on a 4+. Also another really good one, because like I said, if you go with this list, usually what you see a lot of time is Dane and then just an Iron Hills captain or 2, if even that, because these are expensive units, these are expensive heroes as well, and they tend to not have a lot of might. That seems to be the thing that hurts this army, is it's usually cap strapped. So having that captain that gets the 5-up Master of Battle, and now Dane gets it as an army bonus if you're, pure, or if you've allied with one of those 3 that we talked about. Alright guys, I'm going to go ahead and end it here. We're at half an hour. So good thing I didn't talk about the Champions of Erebor. We'll be pushing like 35 to 40 minutes. Again, hope you've enjoyed listening and learning about Iron Hills. Let me know what else you want to see. And I will see you next time with an Army Review series. Take care.